Hi. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Skylight Books, for having me here. If you have talked to me at all in the past 5 years, you've known that I've been very nervous about this book. But I've been looking forward to this with real joy, and being here, and thank you all for coming. I'm so happy Charles is here. About a year ago, two years ago, I was in kind of a dark place with the book, and not sure what I was doing, and I read Charles' novel, How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe. And I was so inspired and knocked out, and I felt like, well, I should keep trying. And then I saw Charles, and I tried to tell him this, and I burst into tears and, thumped him with copies of his own book.
Did.
It was,
You did this.
Super awkward and strange.
It's one of the best moments I've ever had it. Assaulted, but it's nice. When you're doing the assaulting, it's very nice.
So I'm really glad that one of my hero writers is here with me. About 5 or 6 years ago, I read a newspaper article about a collaboration between the Russian and European space agencies. They put 6 volunteers in a module for 520 days. The project was called Mars 500, and it was meant to emulate basically your budget travel to Mars. That's the fastest you can get to Mars, be on Mars for 30 days, and get back. So they wanted to look at the long-term psychological and physiological effects of that kind of isolation. So they put 6 guys, all guys, in a module for 520 days. And they all came out just fine. You can watch YouTube videos of it. Nothing bad happened. The videos are all people cutting each other's hair, enjoying salmon. There's no so I read the article and I thought, that's a great setting for a novel. But then I also thought, I can't write that novel because I don't know anything about space. And then I couldn't get out of my head. So someone said once that if you write what you know, you get 1 novel and 3 poems. I had already written that novel, and my poetry is terrible, so I had to learn something. So I had kind of a long, deep dive into space science. And I thought about writing the whole book from the point of view of the crew members that are doing this simulation. And as often happens when you're a writer, I thought one day, well, I need to know a little bit more about their family members and who they're connected to, so just for myself, I'll write a chapter for one of the astronauts' daughters. And I wrote that chapter and went, oh yeah, these people have to be in the book. So it became a book not just about those who go, but those who are left behind. So we have 7 major characters, 3 astronauts in a simulator, for 17 months, and the daughter, the wife, and the son of each astronaut. So I'm going to read a little bit, and then Charles and I are going to have a conversation. It'll be really natural, and just like we're talking in our living room. And
simulated conversation.
A simulated conversation. When you write a book about simulations, everything becomes a simulation. And you bore your friends with that. So there's not much set up. In the first chapter, we meet Helen. She's an American astronaut in her 50s, and she's been picked for this mission. In the second chapter, we meet Mireille, who's her daughter, who's in her 20s, lives in Los Angeles, and is an aspiring actress who works as a massage therapist at a fancy hotel. So her name's Mireille, nicknamed Meeps, and this is her. A terrible thing has happened to Mireille. She has been selected as the spa employee of the month. She sits now in the hotel employee cafeteria with Clara and Olive, who are also massage therapists, and who have congratulated her with a sincerity that depresses her almost as much as the award. It's only that she wants to be the person she was for a few minutes last night. Murray had made people laugh when she took the floor, so to speak, with a story that began with, I have to say I totally blame Anne Frank. For once she had left a party without the desire to go back and do the whole party over. Was almost certain she had nothing to reproach herself with. Oh, so I have this thing right now, Murray says to Clara and Olive, where I'm trying to live a minimal lifestyle. Only I just realized the other night that the reason I have trouble throwing anything away has to do with this thing that happened to me when I was 6. And, I have to say I totally blame Anne Frank. She's off. She's a little off. She can already tell the story isn't going to work as well as it did last night. The setting is wrong now. Plastic booths and tables and hotel art relocated down to the cafeteria because of mild damage and the smell of institutionalized paella. Also, Olive and Clara are different kinds of friends than the people from her acting class. They're in the healing industry, so neurotic irony has no currency with them the way it does with actors. Murray has chosen her audience unwisely. Okay, so my dad took me to Amsterdam when I was 6. He was speaking at some kind of festival, and I went with him because Murray appears to search her memory and then rolls her eyes to indicate the ridiculousness of having forgotten this particular detail. Oh, yeah, because my mom was in space. She hurries on to the next bit. It goes very badly for her if she tries to enlist sympathy for being the daughter of one of the most admirable women on the planet. If she's pitied wrongly, not for being neglected or eclipsed by her astronaut mother, but for being inadequate and unremarkable in comparison. Anyway, we're in Amsterdam, and my dad takes me to Anne Frank House because, that's what you do. And my dad's trying to give me a nice educational experience and distract me from the fact that my mom could blow up at any moment. And that's the obvious entertainment choice, right? Holocaust Museum. Right, so we're at their museum, and you can see Anne Frank's diary, and that's wonderful, of course, because it's this tremendous document that means so much to so many people. But then there's all this other stuff, Anne Frank's pen, and a book that Anne Frank once gave as a present to someone, and a bus pass that Anne Frank once used, and this drawing she'd done in school that I completely fixated on. I mean, it's not a piece of art. It's not of anything. It's basically a fancy doodle that she colored in. But me being me, I became totally obsessed with this idea that a doodle could become important, could be something that people would put under glass and look at and be incredibly moved by. And so because of the Anne Frank Museum, I became like this slightly morbid 6-year-old hoarder. Murray is definitely a little off because neither Clara nor Olive are laughing, and last night everybody had laughed. Why has she chosen this moment to act like a clown? Nobody wants to go to the circus at 11:30 in the morning. The other thing Murray says is that there's a lot in the museum about Meep guys. She's the woman who helped hide the family and found the diary, and even though Meeps is just what my mother called me because she can't pronounce my real name correctly, I guess I felt this connection to the historical Meep. And wait, your mother can't pronounce your name? Clara grabs Murray's wrist. Murray is aware that her eyes are shining and that she could cry in about 3 seconds if she let herself. But she shouldn't cry. If you cry as an actor, you rob your audience of the chance to cry for you. That's practically a law. My dad chose the name Murray. He was French, so he pronounced it the proper Provençal way. I mean, my mom speaks Russian and Japanese fluently. She's amazing, but she's super Midwestern, so everything comes out a little flat. Anyway, she probably agreed to the name because there was a Russian space station called Mir. It was famously sort of a mess, so, appropriate for me. Ah, says Clara. You're not a mess, says Olive. These friends are giving Murray what she wants, but she doesn't want to be the person who wants what she wants. And so she goes on wanting inaccurately, and so her eyes still shine. Last night, Murray had linked the whole Anne Frank story back to her mom being in space, which led to a comically exaggerated imitation of what her mom sounded like when she spoke Russian with a Midwestern accent, which naturally caused someone to say, wow, so you speak Russian, which allowed Murray to describe traveling with her mother to Moscow for a commemorative space thing, and how Murray had lost her virginity at Star City. A story guaranteed to impress because while everyone had lost their virginity, who else could say they had done it with the son of a cosmonaut in a formerly secret facility 100 yards away from the statue of Laika, the first dog to orbit the Earth. And she had felt wonderful last night knowing that she was that person who could tell that story. And the Earth has not even rotated once since that feeling, and already she's lost it. But I love the name Meep, says Clara. Me too, says Olive. It's so you. Where's her story? How can she get it back? Murray remembers Nestor, who took her virginity, or more honestly, managed to just catch the virginity she heaved at him. She remembers the pine and birch trees of Star City, how she looked up into the dark Russian night and thought that she too was going places. Murray has to go now and have her picture taken to commemorate her winning spa employee of the month before starting her shift. She makes her way down the corridor to Human Resources. The hallways are lined with posters spouting motivational slogans and seasonally appropriate puns. Winter is almost over, so let's put a spring in our step. Murray earned her award because she put together a personal aromatherapy kit for an ultra VIP client, and the ultra VIP wrote a letter to the manager of the hotel to rave about Murray's skills and thoughtfulness, and said the oils had not only changed her life, they'd also cured her chronically ill Wheaten Terrier. Murray is made to stand against a cream wall and hold up her certificate. She smiles and says her name and her department and why she loves working at the hotel. She does not say, I accidentally cured a Wheaten Terrier's pancreatitis with essential oil, because you can't make sarcastic jokes with people who tape up posters that say, let's put a spring in our step, and she's not going to misjudge her audience twice in one day. Once clear of Human Resources, Murray folds her certificate up into a tiny square and takes the employee elevator up to the spa. She hasn't told anyone about her mother's news. It's preposterous, pretty much. Her mother had done the thing where she explained using her special formula, kind voice, and then asked for Murray to share her thoughts and reactions, and Murray had said, well, I think if it's important to you, then you should do it. It's only coming to her now that what her mother was talking about was going to Mars. Murray wonders what she could have possibly been telling herself for the past month that wasn't, my mom is going to Mars. She also can't remember what was so funny about blaming Anne Frank. It's training, her mother had said. Just like before, let's focus on the training, not the going. Except she always did go. Going was always the point. If her mother goes to Mars, then that will be the only story of Murray's life. It will wipe out everything. Murray wants to stay with that thought a little, but promises herself she will return to it later when she has more time to savor how awful it is. She has to touch people now, and there's a chance that people might feel the awful things through her hands. So instead, she will do the thing where she spins it the other way, like her mother is always suggesting. She will start working seriously as an actress in really good things before her mother goes to Mars. And then when her mother does go, people will be interested in Murray's point of view on the whole deal. Murray sees herself and her mother on talk shows, being interviewed together, posing for photographs. She sees herself becoming gracious and generous and funny and tender toward her mother. And she's attracted to this version of herself, and this self snaps open and catches the wind just like it's supposed to, just like the parachute that brought her mother's Soyuz capsule safely to Earth when Murray was 6. She kneads and exfoliates and makes sympathetic noises and tells people to breathe and is genuinely non-judgmental about back hair and psoriasis. She keeps spinning. She's become great. She's big. She's important. And she's carrying her mother close to her. This is the story of a daughter who was inspired by the accomplishments of her mother, who was empowered by them enough to choose her own path, which shoots just as high and as far, as daringly, as riskily, as nobly in its own way. This is the story of the daughter, not the mother. Not the mother shooting into the sky, then higher than the sky, bungling her daughter's name, and neither blowing up nor ever, really, coming home. Thanks.
That's such a beautiful passage because I think it shows it well. It encapsulates so much about what I really love about the book. I think for me, really, we're in Murray's head instantly, and we're feeling all of the tiny kind of gradations of her consciousness, and that's what you. I think that's what pulls. That's the thread. That's all the way through the book. Is that this for me? It's really a book about inner space, and that's what you do so beautifully. I think it's interesting that Murray's an actor, and how much of that was an intuitive choice, or did you just go, aha, that's going to be it?
Well, I wanted each of the family members to be in their own kind of simulation, since simulation was the spine of the book. So So for the Japanese astronaut, his wife Madoka is she's the ambassador for a line of robotic caregivers, and actually has dinner with her own robot at one point. And the son of the Russian astronaut Dmitry is going through his own sort of sexual identity crisis and lying to everyone. So he's in a simulation. He's simulating. They're all trying to simulate being people that they think are needed or wanted. And then with Mireille, I work as a massage therapist in a hotel, although that's not exactly my point of view of the whole thing. But I did want her to have a job that involved simulation, and I also could not research any other thing.
Right.
And I know a lot of actors, so I knew a lot of people to ask about her. And she starts doing motion capture work, which, so not only is she an actress, but she's simulating being a human being for motion capture. So, yeah, it seemed to work.
No, I think it's one of those things where it lines up, and however it happened, it's just so perfect. You know, it's not going to change, and that reminds me of the line. There's so many great lines, but I think for me the essence of the book is that line of "Does this feel real?" is not a meaningful question, and I mean. I just wonder about when did you come up with that line, and did you know? Cause for me, that's sort of the thesis of the book in a bit.
Yeah. Yes, that's the first line of the book, and it gets it's sort of repeated. For me, when I was reading about this newspaper article, I was wondering, well, how real, how efficacious is that study? Mm-hmm. Because wouldn't the things that you experience when you're going to Mars be substantially different than what you would feel in a module with people looking at you knowing you're being tested? So how real is that process? But then I started thinking about how real are any of the processes that we're going through, and it seemed to me there might be a point, if the study was very good, and the simulation I put my astronauts on is kind of a souped-up version involving a lot of virtual reality, but that there might be a point where if you weren't sure what was real, just the word itself might seem to lose its context for you. What's real?
Wake up, Meg. Yeah. Wake up. No, I think that's what's beautifully done. Is sometimes for me, this is a book of convincingly semi-hard sci-fi.
Thank God.
The thing that it sometimes feels like for me is like peanut butter and pickles or something. It just people are trying to force two things together, and I think you made a thing first, and then the whole sandwich is made of that. And this is a delicious sandwich, is what I'm trying to say. So, I mean, just in terms of craft, for me, I mean, I guess how did you kind of make that amalgam? Because for me personally, as a writer, that's a very interesting process. Is did you have a kind of a bucket for your sci-fi research and a bucket for your personal stories, and go, how do I blend the language? And because on a micro scale, it's also very well blended. And
thank you. I did probably 1.5 years of research before I wrote anything. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was about trying to understand, trying to learn as much as I could. Actually, I went to space camp when I was researching this book, and one of my fellow space camp sisters is here, Gabrielle. So I did all kinds of research, and it took me 1.5 years before I wrote the first chapter, just because I felt like I needed to know what I was talking about first. And then I wrote a lot of really technical chapters and deleted them because they were bad. And I just wanted, whenever the science comes up, I wanted it to be tied very concretely to what was happening with the characters. I didn't want info dropping of space science, and that is hard because space science is so interesting and cool, and there's there's an urge to show off, like, look, I worked really hard and I know it. Look, I know space. I did it. And then you go, that's great. That's very impressive. It's so bad, boring. Delete that.
Right.
And then tell people at your reading, I know space. No, but I wanted it to just not be that. I didn't want to info drop. So when I just kept a sharp eye out for it, because for me it was really all about these people.
So the trick is editing, you're saying?
Yeah.
Good writing is about editing. If I had a pen, I would write that down. Because that's the thing. You don't miss, like, I don't miss all of that info dump stuff. You know, I mean, in fact, for me, it makes it, I call it semi-hard sci-fi. I meant that as a compliment. Like, it didn't feel like I was being exposited at. It felt like this kind of light touch, and it, like you said, it was always resonant with some other thing that was happening there. So I feel like I'm just gushing at the book, and maybe I should...
It's totally okay. I mean, how do you approach it, though?
Blindly.
Yeah,
pretty blind. I mean, I think I don't do research partly because I'm not interested in any of it, and I know I won't be. So I just fake it, and then after the fact get get nervous about it, or maybe do the bare minimum amount to, like, kind of justify what I wrote. But even then, it's like, whatever, it's gobbledygook, and so I'm just like, it's like I'm trying to, like, sneak in a poem, basically, and then, in the guise of a sci-fi story, which I think, moments of this book are so poetic, and I wonder, in terms of the process of the writing, and I'm sorry to ask craft questions, but, I'm going to do it, because I have the microphone, you know what I mean? So, but did you write it in chapter, because some of them feel so, like, just... I mean, I guess the nature of the structure of the book is we have POV characters, and you go through them. How did you come up with their stories? Did you break kind of the stories for each character and then blend them, or?
Yeah, I'm not that organized. Yeah, I didn't do any outline, or I think the reason it took me so long with the first chapter is I have to know the whole book in the first chapter. So, so I keep projecting forward. It's like you need to hear all the instrument. You need to hear the whole symphony, and then you go, okay, it needs more woodwinds or brass or whatever. We need to find it there. Because I have 7 major characters, so it's 7 points of view. It was great for me as a writer, because each time I would start a new chapter, it's like, oh, hey, here you are again. I missed you. I haven't seen you in 5 chapters. And so then cycled back to try to, thread their storylines through. But yeah, it wasn't a beautifully organized, which is why it took me 4 years. If I had maybe outlined it.
Well, that's interesting what you said. It's really interesting to me. You said you need to know what the book is in the first chapter.
Yeah.
Like in the first few pages, you already have to feel like the book has worked itself out in your head.
Yeah, not as a concrete, this is going to happen, but I need to know the feel of what I'm trying to say with the book.
Right.
And then, of course, other things will happen that completely surprise you and change the direction, but I need to know the heart of the book by the first chapter.
What does that look like when you're actually struggling to figure out your book without having written it yet? Sometimes it's more like image thing. I just saw 7 people that were trying to travel to find each other, and were in isolated. We're each isolated, and so it was about trying to find how do these 7 people get anywhere? How do any of us get anywhere? How do we understand anything? Yeah. So then it was just finding each particular struggle that each of them had. Yeah, isolation is a big part of it for me. It's such a beautiful metaphor that you literalize, but it just, the concept of distance and the fact that they're not, necessarily as far as they need to be, but effectively they are, because they can't see each other. So in that sense, the 17 months is the distance. And, that to me, that's such a sort of it's such an amazing way to tell essentially a story about any family, which is you're separated most of the time.
Right. Yeah.
I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you sort of thought about the different families. And we've got one family that's essentially moved to America.
Right.
Another family that's, it's just two, right? It's Murray and Helen.
Yeah. I never intend to really write about families, and then I always do in every book. It's like, Mom again, I thought, I was reading all these astronaut memoirs and biographies, and of course they're all terribly heroic and perfect and fabulous. And then I saw a video clip of an astronaut on the space station, and he was Skyping with his son, who's like 15. Of course, the son looks just embarrassed and awkward. He doesn't want to talk to his father, who's on the space station. I mean, you would think... Right. But no, he's just a 15-year-old kid whose dad is asking him awkward questions about his homework that he doesn't want to answer, and the dad is very awkward with his own son. Well, how's that going?
Right.
And I thought, we probably will send human beings to Mars at some point. And there's a reason we want human beings there and not robots. I mean, the robots are doing a pretty great job. Bless their hearts. They just keep going. But they're, slow. They can't go, hey, what's that thing? You have to tell it what to do. But we want human beings to go and look and tell us what it's like. But those human beings will be human and have families and loves and disappointments. And so I wanted to... these astronauts in the book are not based on real astronauts. No astronauts were harmed in the thing. I couldn't do that, but I just wanted to peel back what that looked like, because it occurred to me it's not a small thing to be related to someone who operates on that kind of level. The qualities that make a good astronaut aren't necessarily the qualities that make a great parent. But then again, we have a simulation of what we think a great mother is. Is that really a useful simulation? Since pretty much all of us have complaints about our mothers, maybe we've picked the wrong simulation. Right. Since it's not working for any of us, if we all feel that our mother didn't do exactly what we wanted our mother to do, then maybe we need to throw out that idea, our expectation of a mother. So everybody's kind of trying to rewrite their family laws in the book.
Yeah, no, that it made me the idea of Murray thinking about, or the idea of Helen being the kind of person that has to do this. It has to do it.
Yeah.
And that the price of that is years apart from her daughter, and yet if she doesn't do it, then she's not herself.
Yes. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
And it is interesting, people went off to war and left their families behind. It's a thing that happens, families being separated. They do, they tend to ask the women astronauts, how does your daughter feel? Right. And they're like, ask my male crew member how he feels about leaving his son. They still sort of expect the female crew members to have a different point of view. And Helen takes that on, herself.
Right. Yeah, that's another of my favorite lines is, men like feminism if they think it was their idea.
Well, they do.
I think it was my idea, actually, so
thanks,
I'm pretty sure.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks for feminism.
Right? Okay, you're welcome.
I was going to ask you, so Charles writes, literary fiction novels, but you have science fiction in one of the titles of your books, and so just because it's come up for me as we've been promoting and talking about this book, and people ask, so do you write is it sci-fi or is it fi? Is it literary fiction? And how have you sort of, when you straddle both worlds like that, or?
Yeah, no, it's I try to straddle it. I think because there is a part of me that wants to say, no, it's more, don't judge it, by its title. And then there's part of me like, well, it's probably fair to judge it by its title. And then I think it is a weird thing. Mostly it's just a thing of like, where does it go in the bookstore? You know? And
yeah.
I mean, there is a little bit more, I guess, in that sometimes, especially with the title like How to Live Safely in a Science Fictional Universe, that carries a certain kind of genre expectation that will, as I've painfully experienced, actually disappoint people in a real way if they pick it up or buy it and think, oh, this is not what I thought. But I think, for the most part, it's great because then I get to kind of,
speak to both.
Yeah, I get to sort of fail in two different genres.
Right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. No, it's a tricky thing.
It really is.
Yeah. I like to keep expectations low.
Yeah.
So it does seem if you say it's science fiction, people are like, it's going to be pew 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 and
right.
Action adventure.
Right.
And I'm like, no, it's people talking. It's just people talking for almost 400 pages. There's no pew pew pew. But then you don't want to. Science fiction is great and has a great history. You don't want to. And I love the science in the book, so.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I think it's beautifully done. You got kind of the cosmic take on, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of ways you could have gone with this. There is no, well, there is a little guy, but it's not like a huge,
It's not a helmet.
It's not a helmet, or Mars or something, I guess. So, I feel like so much of it comes down to that sometimes too, because it literally shapes your first impression of it, and then you're like, okay, you're right, it's a beautiful font,
Right.
I mean, this is the paperback, but the hardcover actually has pew pew pew. It has a bunch of ray guns, which is a beautiful cover, but again, that really sets up a certain kind of expectation that I learned, that it's going to happen.
Right, it's going to happen. You just deal with it. Then is that your advice to me? Just
deal with it.
Deal with it.
Be happy. Stop complaining.
Yeah,
you have a beautiful published book.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Do that.
No, I'm sorry. Another line I really love is that the crew is the technology.
Yeah.
Which I think is another just beautiful crystallization of what you're writing about here, or what I think you're writing. Here's the thing. When I really love a book, I like to pretend I wrote it. So I'm pretty sure that was my idea, again, like feminism. But so this, the metaphors just interlock so well for me. And I'm obsessed with how kind of beautifully layered it is without ever feeling forced. And so another kind of the aspect of it that I thought was interesting was that you did make it international, and that was obviously a degree of difficulty. But for me, what that does is make three different kinds of consciousnesses, in terms of national origin.
Right.
Be curious to hear what challenges or what that was like to try to do it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a little tough. I mean, my method is to swing for the fences in the first draft, and then when you get to the editing point, then really see where I might have screwed up and been American when I was in someone who's Japanese head, or where language things where I was just lazy or moving too quickly. But they each came with their own sort of set of things. I didn't want it to just be Americans or just a crew full of white people. But each one of them had their own little challenge. So thinking about them all the time, they each came within their own syntax. Mm-hmm. So usually when working on it after about an hour in, I'd be in that person's syntax. To kind of. I got a little. I have a family that lives in Japan, so that helped me with research in Japan. And then I was a ballet dancer, so I've lived with a lot of Russians all my life. And not physically lived with them, but
No, it's done really well, I thought. Are we getting?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I think we're opening it up for questions.
Did you not?
Yeah, no, I didn't have a thought. You literally saved me from just going.
Yeah. You know the basic thing. Charles invented feminism, and we're very grateful. And if you
take away
pew pew
one thing
pew,
tonight.
yeah, pew pew pew. That's your 2 takeaways. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Peter.
I want to hear about space camp.
Space camp.
What is space camp?
What happens at space camp? It's actually called Launchpad Astronomy Workshop for Writers. It's fantastic. It's run out of the University of Wyoming. Michael Brotherton, who's a astrophysicist, started this program with the idea of, look, writers and of all kinds, we know that you're not scientists and you're going to want to write science. That's great. Could you try to get some of it right? That would be even better. So they created this fellowship, and they invite half a dozen writers each year to come, and it's like a Berlitz course, basically. You're there for a week from 8 in the morning to 6 at night lectures. You stay in dorm rooms.
Wow.
It's great. It's nerd ground zero. We're all just with our... And it was really fun. It was great. There was a day when... So they have a big telescope there at the University of Wyoming, and they said, well, they need 2 people always to be at the telescope because it's just surrounded by nothing and like moose. And they said, well, the astronomer that's up there lost her partner, so does any one of you want to volunteer to stay up all night at the telescope and work on the telescope? And I was like, thinking, during the whole... Right. Thinking everybody else would be like, pick me, and no one else except for Gabrielle. We both had our hands up. So we went off, and all we were doing was moving the telescope very slightly to take these photographs at a binary star system, a couple light years away, and we were both like, "This is the most moving thing I've ever done." It was truly moving because what we do is so ephemeral feeling. So to actually just move a piece of equipment, you could hear it, move, and then take a photograph. It's like I'm doing a real thing for the first time in my life. I am doing an actual job. It was great. So yeah, space camp was super fun.
Do you eat astronaut ice cream?
No, we ate in the cafeteria. Okay. Yeah.
Boring.
Yeah, it's kind of boring. Yeah.
And we met rodeo majors.
Oh yeah, there was one of the other people. So her friend showed up. He was like a 24-year-old guy who was a physics major. But before he got interested in being a physics major, he rode professional rodeo. We were like, really?
He was a rodeo major.
Yeah, he was a rodeo major.
And then I did math as a grad student.
Yeah. I mean, they're great. Space people are great. They all have these crazy backgrounds. They're all like, I participate in my local theater, and I'm an astrophysicist. It's fantastic.
Typical path.
Yeah.
Boring.
Anybody else? Yes.
So, talking about the book cover and the fact that the cover, you didn't go with just the helmet sort of thing.
Right.
The title also. At what point in the process did you have the title decide that you didn't want a traditional pew-pew?
When I read that planets means the wanderers. That's the Greek. The ancient Greeks were, when they were looking at the skies, they noticed that there were these couple of objects that did not seem to move in fixed ways the way the stars did, but they seemed to sort of meander, and so they called those objects, which were Mars and Venus and Jupiter, and they called them the wanderers, which in Greek was planets. So I thought, done. Before that, the title of the book was "This Book I'm Writing, Which Is Almost Certainly Doomed." That was my. So it was good to get that off the computer. Yeah. Really? Yes. Oh, thank you, Julie.
I know it took you a long time. Tell us about the dark times.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know there must have been some.
Yeah. Jay, you want to take this? I had to listen to a lot of it. My friends. Yeah, I think doing hard things is good. So, I always like that, but I don't want to oversell how hard writing is. It's a privilege to write. Let's face it. I mean, I'm not running to the bushes while someone chases me with a machete. I'm sitting in my apartment writing. It's a privilege. Yet. Oh, God. But yeah, I mean, I felt I was stepping way out of my comfort zone. It was a much more ambitious book for me than I had tried before, and so it's just quieting that voice in the head that's like, you are stomping with Ugg boots on really delicate things. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be in this. You should be doing something else. Yeah, right.
No, that's a good yeah.
So I've learned to, take more breaks when that happens, because my writing is just crap when I feel that way, and I'm crap, and I lose my friends, and I don't lose them. They're very patient people, but I feel I'm just apologizing to everyone constantly. So I've learned to just step away and read some books. Read a good book by something that makes you want to write better.
And then you can say that you were, pretend you were.
Yeah, I can pretend that. Yeah, I can, yeah. So, yeah, that's my only way to get through. Step away now.
Yeah, because I know sometimes people come up to you and want and say, I really want to write a book, and I always want to say,
Yeah, it's a marathon. Yeah, it's not a sprint, for sure. Yes, Ted?
Do you have any particular models or inspirations, literary or filmic or anything?
I didn't. Yeah, I couldn't. That was one of the problems, actually, is I felt like, how do you? I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that was in there, or moments in there. I was listening to a lot of music, a lot of sort of postmodern classical music, which for me was a really great way to think of the rhythms of the book. So things sort of repeating and repeating and moving in circles. But yeah, I couldn't find, I thought what Charles was doing was probably the closest, even though we do different things. It was like, well, I felt that he had achieved in his work what I was going for. So, yeah, that was the closest.
So, I'm just curious, the absurdity of the simulation reminds me a little bit of Biosphere.
Yeah, Biosphere 2, right.
Did you were you into that?
I remember reading about it at the time. So if you don't, Biosphere 2, they put people in a big dome, and it was meant to be this great sort of utopian thing, and of course it just collapsed, and it was a disaster. But they had a lot more room to move around too. I've been interested in that, but I don't really know that much about it, just sort of the highlights of it. I mean, putting people in a small space, unlocking the door is tricky. You got to basically be an astronaut to take it. I don't think most of us could. You have to have something that much at stake, I think. You have to understand, you have to be more interested in getting it right than feeling good. And astronauts are really good at getting it right and putting feeling good way down on their list of priorities. So, yeah.
Would you ever consider writing the next piece where they actually do go?
I'm moving slightly away from space for the next book. I'm giving space a little bit of a rest. Yeah. A little space between me and yeah. And by the time I finished the book, I was feeling persecuted by space.
In the vein of that question, one of my favorite themes in the book was that there was a creative person in each one of these families that were going up in space, and they were all trying to make a name for themselves on Earth, and they were about to be the sibling or the son or the husband or whatever of a very, very famous person.
Right.
So I guess my question is, what happens to Murray?
I think she's, by the end of the book, she's in a pretty good place for things to happen. It's always fun to imagine what happens for your characters after the book. My first novel, Blind Sight, there's a character, Luke, and it ends in a place where we're not really sure what's going to happen to Luke. And he's in this book. So if you read Blind Sight and you wondered what happened to Luke, he's the seventh person. It's not exactly. In the first draft of this book, there was a bit more that linked him directly to Blind Sight. And my editor, who hadn't read, because it was a new editor for me, she hadn't read Blind Sight, so she was like, "I don't know why we need to know all this about his sister." And I was like, "We don't." I just so I pared it down. But for those in the know. So I got to answer that question with what happens to Luke, and one of the other characters from this book is going to be in the next book too. So maybe I'll just keep cycling them through.
I like it.
Yeah.
The Howrey universe.
Yeah, it's people my own universe.
Right.
Yeah, that seems very mature.
Well, I'll ask, what are you both working on next?
Yay. Oh, yeah, I wanted to, yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, you. So Charles was working on Westworld.
I was.
And then you have this new show.
I'm on a new show, yeah, for
Can you
HBO.
say anything about the show?
A little bit. It's a family drama starring Holly Hunter and Tim Robbins, created by
great.
Alan Ball, who did 6 Feet Under. And it's. I'm really excited. It's fun.
Great.
It's my third TV job that I've taken while not finishing a novel. So my editor and agent are very sad.
Yeah.
But I do need to earn a living.
Pay the bills. Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah. Novels don't do it.
Not when you write one every 7 to 10 years.
Right.
Apparently,
Right.
is my periodic orbit.
Right.
How about you?
I'm working on a new book. I can't really say anything about it because it's very. I'll say that the research books on the side of the desk either have to do with AI or hair. Hair, yeah,
Wow.
body hair, yeah. So that'll be good. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I have a question for Charles. How did you make the transition from being a novelist to being a TV writer? How did that happen?
It happened through books. Really, is what it was. Through books I started to meet people, and then eventually went on meetings, and then got a call out of the blue. I was working as a lawyer the whole time I was writing books, and I just one day they said they're staffing on this show called Westworld, and I had to make the choice: would I jump from something very stable, and I my wife and I have kids, so it was kind of a scary thing, but it seemed like the right time, and so I did that. Went to the dark side. No, it's been great. Enjoyed it a lot. It's also changed, sort of the way I look at story a little bit, but for the most part, there's such different activities that it does sort of feel like I've got a day job, and I also still procrastinating on my writing. So
you were at like your lawyer job, and it was like, do you want to work on Westworld?
Yep,
Yeah.
pretty much.
It's great.
Yeah. So
That's a good day. I bet that was a good day.
it's a weird day.
Yeah,
Yeah,
weird
it's a
day. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
but
because you didn't know what it. I mean,
I did. Yeah, it's like. I mean, I guess I probably shorthanded that day a little bit, but it was basically that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So the dark side. So is it just? I mean, because it's collaborative or political? What makes it the dark side versus law?
Oh no, I was kidding. It's not the dark side. It's a wonderful. I love it. I love my job. I cannot complain. We usually get free lunch.
What did you learn about story there, and could you talk about the different working styles that you have on novels versus collaborative?
Yeah, I definitely.
The question is the different writing styles, going from being a novelist to writing collaboratively on a television show.
Yeah, it is really. That's really it. It's collaborative, and so it's a team sport. On a good day, it really feels like soccer or hockey, where it's like it kind of a very fast-moving conversation that you never know where one idea is going to lead to, and sometimes something will start out one way and it just seems like, oh, that's a tangent, and then like 3 or 4 pings later, it's you've hit on something as a group that's very interesting. I've tried to recreate that a little bit in my own head. It doesn't work because all of the people are me, and so it's like, But a little bit of kind of the process of it I've tried to port into, and it's also, but I mean, the difference really is that the constituent unit is really kind of a beat, like what is going to play on a screen, or an emotional story beat. Whereas, Meg's book is a beautiful example. It's the words, it's really the words and the ideas, and there are things you can do in fiction that you cannot do anywhere else because, the technology that Meg is doing is getting into someone's head in a way that is so rich and so layered that has been a little bit of I have to constantly remind myself, like, this will not play on a screen if you try to achieve that kind of effect. So yeah, they don't really want poetry on TV apparently. But no, that said, TV has changed a lot recently, and there are people that are trying to do really exciting things, and there's so many forms of storytelling and so many really gifted people doing things. It's just a different medium is really what I've had to learn as a kind of rookie. Yeah.
Yes.
Mary, I was going to ask, coming from your background in dance, is there something or some part of your brain that you still use when you're writing that came from your dance background? Or, I don't know, I'm not really sure what I'm trying to ask, but this is sort of creativity that came out of that?
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of writers that were ballet dancers. It's such a different, it uses two different, yeah. I think maybe there's something to do with, but the kind of dance I did, ballet and then theater dance, is very narrative storytelling. So there's that. There's trying to understand a story and how to tell a story in two very different ways. I do write in a super physical way, which is why I write at home. I do a lot of that. Make faces. So I mean, they don't cross over. The great thing about being a ballet dancer is that everything you do after that is easier and can be done in pants. So if you choose, you don't have to. You don't have to wear those pants, but if you want to, you can wear pants. And there's no pants in ballet. So that helps. And also when you're a ballet dancer, you're just like, I will never have any money, and it will be hard, and no one will ever really understand what I'm doing. And so then everybody backs off in your life. Nobody's like, when are you going to get that real job? They just give up really quickly. And so now anytime I do anything normal, my family is like, that's wonderful. Like learn to drive a car. They're like, good for you. And I'm like, I wrote a book. They're like, that's, yeah. Yeah, so they don't really cross over, but maybe just the desire to tell stories. Like the same little girl that wanted to act out the music still wants to act out the music some way. Hi.
So you talked about the spine of the book being simulation, and that was part of everyone's story. I feel like there was a part or an aspect or relation to the book that wasn't simulation anymore.
Well, Luke is the one observing. He's outside. He's sort of us in a way. He's the one watching. So he gets pulled into the simulations in various ways, but remains outside it, which is very frustrating for him. He knows something's going on with these seemingly perfect people that are on the screen in front of him, but so he remains outside of it, which gave him a nice grounded quality for me. Also, he was my guy from my earlier book, so yeah.
I think we have time for one more, if there is one more.
Regarding his question, I would think that one thing that would have carried over having been a ballet dancer and being an author would be self-discipline involved. You're highly motivated as a ballet dancer. You don't necessarily know the outcome. It sounds like that's very similar as an author as well. You may or may not have like daily deadlines, but you have this, overwhelming, deadline you have to meet ultimately, and you have to stay on task at every moment of every day based on your own motivation.
Right.
And I think as a dancer that is the case too. So I would say a lot of carryover in that.
Yeah. I think I'm more disciplined as a writer than I was as a dancer, in a weird way. But yeah, there is that.
How?
There's. I try harder for longer as a writer.
In a similar vein, how does the stage fright compare?
It's terrible. I thought with my first book, before I went to my first reading, I was like, I used to perform in pointe shoes and tights in front of lots of people, jumping and turning in pointe shoes. So reading a book will be totally fine. And I was like, yeah. I didn't make up the choreography that I was dancing or the costumes or the sets. I hadn't, my job was to not fall over, and I wasn't to be blamed about really anything else. And with a book, it was like, I did everything. I did all of this. If it's bad, it's mine. So I get really nervous.
More invested in it.
Yeah. I feel better now, though. Thank you. So this is you were all so lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Skylight. Thank you for having
me. You've been listening to the Skylight Books Author Reading Series. Don't forget that you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.